Okay, hi, welcome back to this next video where we're going to install WordPress on an actual Windows PC rather than the Mac as in the other video. So it should be very short. We'll hopefully get through the same kind of problems that you encounter yourself, whether it be on a Mac or a PC. So be sure first of all to download this from wordpress.org rather than wordpress.com, which is an entirely different system. So when you get that downloaded, double check on your downloads directory that you've got the right file. So you should see it there as WordPress 551. Just copy that and place that then in your directory where you want to put where your root directory basically is. So that should be for Laragon, c/Laragon/www. So make sure that the root directory, Laragon www, is empty before placing anything into that. And when you paste it in there, we'll have the zip file in it. So this is the next step that you need to do, basically extracting all that information, that installation. And a lot of people got this wrong when you use certain versions of WinZip weren't extracting absolutely everything. And we'll just take a look at what you need to see extracted in order to be sure that that's correct. So I'm just going to use Windows Explorer to open it, and I'll open that file to get access directly to this WordPress directory specifically. So I'll go back to that root and I'll paste in the WordPress directory. Okay, so this might take a second or two. If it's extracted correctly, that it's got everything you need. So it should have these three directories at the beginning: WP-admin, WP-content, WP-includes. Some people, it didn't extract the WP-admin correctly, so they were getting that kind of configuration file not found when it came time to install it. So at this stage, I guess you can just delete that zip file to save it on, save duplication happening. And that's been extracted and placed in the root directory. So what we want to do now is build the database. So we go to Laragon, make sure that the information that you have for the database is correct. So what I'm going to do is I just wrote down some little details here of the database that I want to call it, so we have access to that information later on. You'll need this username, database name, password later on, so I suggest you just write it down somewhere or keep it in a separate file as you're installing it so you can get access to it at all times. So let's go to databases. I just want to call it something completely different than I did in lab so it doesn't conflict with anything else. So I'll just call it WP Data CDM 2020. Okay, so that should create for us easily enough. The next step we want to do is make some users on that to give them some privileges. So I'll double click on this and you can see I've got a lot of users that I had already. So we're going to make something completely different so that it just doesn't cause any conflicts. And you can just stick with the names that are in the lab sheet. If it's your first time installing it. So I'll make a new user here, and that's going to be Mr. Brightside 2020. Now here's one issue that some people using a Mac might have, that you do sort of have to specify that it's local host. You can leave it just any host here when you're using Windows, but I'd recommend you just get into the habit of filling out all of the details in these forms. So we'll just specify that is actually local host to avoid any problems with connecting to the database before it installs everything correctly. So the password that I've suggested here, I'm just going to copy it in and paste that goes in there. Right, so Mr. Brightside localhost. Give Mr. Brightside 2020 all the privileges, double check it, and we'll assign that user. So this is going to be the user that pretty much administrates your full database there. Okay, so at this point we can probably start installing WordPress. So we'll go back to the browser, the local host per se, and just type in that word localhost. Normally we would get a whole bunch of index files or whatever else is there as PHP files. At the moment it's just got that WordPress directory, so we'll let's activate that WordPress directory. So one tiny little thing to draw your attention to is inside the WordPress directory there is no WP config file. There's only this WP config sample file. When we create the database, when we install this, a WP config will be created with all that details of the database and username, etc. So we're just going to come back to that in a second after we've done this installation. So we can then click on that, just say WordPress, and off it goes. So English, US, English, whatever, it's the only option we seem to have there. That's okay. And we'll press continue, and now we need that information again. So this is building our config file. So let's go. It's going to ask us for all that once again. So keep it written down somewhere. and just get that typed in somehow so that you have access to it. So WP is Mr. Brightside. And the password as before. Okay, and localhost is okay, just leave it. It means the localhost of this computer, not particularly localhost /8888 or anything. Double check that information. The prefix is going to be okay. WP underscore whatever for every PHP file created. So submit that. It's going to run the installation now. And there it goes. So this is created for us. We'll see if we take a look at that file now. The in the WordPress directory, on the root directory, that WP config file has now been created, and that's going to have that information in there with the details such as Mr. Brightside or the username and the password that you used. Okay, so what this next phase is looking for once it began the installation is asking us, what do we really want to call our website? So we'll just call it whatever, CDM yearly blog. I'm just going to call this my name here as a username because I'll be the administrator of it. This is different than Mr. Brightside, who is, administrating, is not the WordPress administrator, but is basically, the root user of the database. So this person here is just going to be the user who updates the blog articles and works with the dashboard. Okay, so we'll just put an information there, basic email. Generally speaking, you have to wait till you get your hosting to know what your email address is going to be, but it does expect you to have some type of an email there. All right, so that's the name of our blog, and install. Okay, so that's been installed, and we can then log in as that user. Remember, that's a different user than this kind of power user, Mr. Brightside, who runs the database. This user is just someone who is going to kind of administrate the dashboard. So we can log into that. So there's the username and the password. I just left it the same for display purposes today for this video. Log in, and this is going to bring us to our dashboard, localhost WordPress WP-admin dashboard. Okay, so once you've got to this dashboard, you have a website, you have it running. We can pretty much work directly within this from now on, and almost not really have to go to PhpMyAdmin too much. But anyway, let's make some changes to this website. So the first thing we want to do is visit settings, because it may say CDM yearly blog, it may say just another WordPress site. So I'm hoping you're not planning to make just another WordPress site. You're making something of interest. Okay, let's just put something kind of mildly interesting there. The best site of the year 2020. The year 2020. The weirdest year of the world. The weirdest year of the decade. Okay, so that's going to appear on our main page. This URL, we don't want it to be localhost WordPress, because then when you get your hosting, you're going to call it like, mywebsite.com/WordPress. No, you want to just go to mywebsite.com. So we got to get rid of that actual WordPress, directory reference there in the main site URL. So I'll save that down, save changes. Okay, so once we've made those changes to specify that the URL is just localhost rather than localhost/WordPress, we need to do one final thing, which is tell the index file that we've done that, because the index file will reside just on your main website, your main root directory. So let's go to the directory structure. There's the root directory here. You can see htaccess has already been placed into the root directory. Let's go into the WordPress environment here, and we basically want to take out this index file from there, copy it, and put it back one directory into the root directory, so that when we type in localhost, the index appears. Now that index doesn't realize at the moment that all of the WordPress materials are in this directory, so we've got to tell it that. So we'll open up and take a look at some of the code here. This is the file we need to locate, which is where it thinks at the moment that the WordPress environment is in the same directory where the index file exists, but that is not the case. The index file is in a different directory to the WordPress environment, so we need to tell it where to get it. So that's what this line is, the one that you were given in the worksheet. So really just tell the index where to find the WordPress materials. So that's how we do it there. So don't forget to end that properly with the brackets and the little semicolons that require, all the files are in the WordPress directory. Okay, so we can save that there. And now we should be in a position to actually open up the local host and see all this settings as it would look in a main website. So we've told the indexed file that the material for WordPress is in the WordPress directory. So we should just be able to write localhost alone. And there you go. So CDM3 yearly blog, the best site of the year 2020. So this is our website. This is the first installation of WordPress. All of the subdirectories and meta directories are installed. Here's the user who will administrate the local host. That's the dashboard. So I'm logged on as that user. Howdy, etc. Okay, and that's the administrator that's going to set up the WordPress. Different to the main administrator for the database, but you'll be able to install multiple users as they log on to this particular site. So people can just become customers or fans or whatever, users of your site, and just get a little login information there. Okay, so there's one final thing we want to do just for security purposes. When we go to this directory WordPress, that directory, that wp-config directory, like I explained earlier, has a lot of information in it. It's actually got passwords and it's got database names in it. So you don't want to hanging around an easy to locate WordPress directory, which will appear when you view the source code. So what we're going to do is just get it out of there and put that in the root directory. So just cut, we'll do it, go back to this directory, the root directory, C Laragon www, and paste it in there. So that's just a security feature. That's not anything that's gonna make it look any different, but it means that those kind of passwords and database names and usernames are not available to any hacker just looking at the basic source code. Okay, so when we reload that, it really doesn't change things, but the source code is safer for us. So there you go. That's the WordPress installation in just under 14 minutes.